the mechanisms to report violence in school. And this is a kind of follow-up of the last learning event that we had organized in December 2021, and which focused on gender-based violence in school. Let's say globally, you may already know that as well. We have more than 1 billion of children that are still experiencing one or another form of physical, sexual, or emotional violence, and much of them is in school. This is global figures, but it's very high. And we know that in African countries and in our region, we know that there are also a very important proportion of children that are facing such kind of violence in school. So to prevent such violence, it is important to promote a no silence culture. And then if we want to promote this no silent culture, this starts with a kind of developing or strengthening mechanism to report violence in school. So the topic of today's learning event is therefore very important, and I would like to encourage all of us to take better use of this learning opportunity for enhanced protection of our children in school. So just to say again, welcome, and we hope that other participants will be joining very soon, so that we all take advantage of this learning opportunity. To see how we can improve our program, our support, and the implementation of our activities in the countries to ensure the maximum protection of children in school. So colleagues, let me stop here by wishing all of us a fruitful learning opportunity. So thank you very much. I think that for the next item of agenda, we will have our colleague Mona, child protection specialist, UNICEF regional office, that will set the scene by taking us through the challenges, the successes, and the resources on mechanism to report violence in school. So let me hand over to you, Mona, for the next item. Over. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bifith. And hello, everyone. A warm welcome to this webinar. Bifith has pretty much set the scene, but maybe just to zoom down specifically on the violence. You know, violence, as we all know, is a serious and it's life-threatening human rights for children, for boys, for girls, for women across different contexts, in development context, but also in humanitarian context. In Eastern and Southern Africa region, we have a wealth of data. There are about 11 countries that have completed the Violence Against Children survey, which is basically capturing the prevalence of sexual, physical, and emotional violence. And out of this survey, what we're seeing as a regional picture is that more than 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys have experienced sexual violence before reaching the age of 18. And more than half of the boys, about 53.8%, and 4 in 10 of the girls have experienced physical violence in childhood. And the one thing that I always want to mention here is that, you know, it's one thing experiencing the violence, and it's another to report and tell somebody about it. And it's another very important aspect where you actually can receive good quality services and timely services as you need. So as we all know, a lot of children spend a lot of time in schools, and hence the need to ensure the protection of them while in school. That's why it's very exciting to be part of this webinar, where we'll be hearing from colleagues in education, Ministry of Education, but also child protection, who will be here to share with us their experiences on what exactly they're doing to address violence in and around schools. So as you can see there, the projection, we are going to start off straight and visit Botswana. And in Botswana, we'll actually have Madam Gloria, who is the Deputy Director from the Department of Special Support Services in the Ministry of Education and Skills Development in Botswana. Following Gloria's presentation, we'll move straight and go to Malawi, where we'll have a team presenting what exactly they are doing, the reporting mechanisms in schools to address violence. So we're going to start off with Janet, who is a child protection specialist from UNICEF Malawi. Following that, we'll hear from Shanifa, a child protection desk officer for the Ministry of Education. And then we'll also hear from Eso, a child protection officer from the Malawi Police Service. And then following the two exciting presentations, we'll then go to a Q&A session to actually be able to ask questions or make comments based on the presentations you've had. And then we will have a discussion, and then we'll do an event assessment done by Zamzam, and we'll be able to do the closure of the session. So without further ado, let me now stop here and welcome the Deputy Director of the Department of Special Support Services, Gloria, to present the Botswana experience. Over to you, Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Good afternoon, team. All protocol observed. It's our pleasure to have been invited to this very important meeting. It's a meeting of interest to us as a ministry, as a Department of Special Support Services, and as the entire nation, Botswana, because we are facing the same challenges like all other countries. Our children, our learners in schools, they are experiencing violence. And it is of interest to us that we are going to be dialoguing, sharing this, going into discussions so that we can learn better practices or good practices from other countries as well. So that is why in attendance with me this afternoon is the director of this department, Mrs. Mabote. So don't be surprised in case she chips in, especially when we'll be going through the discussions or when posing questions or even responding to questions. So let me go straight to the assignment. I'm reporting on country mechanisms to report violence in schools, learning from country experiences, the case of Botswana. And it's being presented by myself, once again, Mrs. Gloria Haizewe, Deputy Director, DSSS, Ministry of Education and Skills Development, Botswana. Let's move on to the next slide. I just wanted to give the team some background so that they understand where the education system of Botswana comes from. It is important to learn, colleagues, that the education system in Botswana is provided for in public and private schools. And it is governed by a minister and who is being assisted by 2 assistant ministers under this ministry, which is called Ministry of Education and Skills Development. The ministry's mandate is to provide access to equity education and training as provided for in the SDG 4 from pre-primary. It runs up to tertiary education to transform Botswana's economy from resource-based into a knowledge-based economy. The ministry executes its mandates through different departments, and these departments include, but not limited to, the following: special education, special support services, curriculum development and evaluation, basic education, and others, of course. And then let's move on. The education system is decentralized so that it is spread across the entire country. That means that there are 10 regional offices led by the directors, and these directors in regions, they're being assisted by chief education officers. And also they have the assistant directors and the principal education officers. The structure of education in our schools, and this structure is imperative that you understand that we have not forgotten the fact that we've got learners with special needs at all levels in our schools, and even, of course, outside school. So it is important to take note here that at all levels, there is provision for learners with special educational needs through resource classes, units, or inclusive setups. Now we're going down to the different levels. We start off with the primary education. The primary education starts with pre-primary, that is 0 to 4 years, and it runs up to primary education, where learners are enrolled from the age of 5 up to the age of 11 years. The current setup is where learners will write primary school leaving examinations, that's abbreviated to PSLE, at standard 7, the final year of primary education, after which there is 100% transition into junior secondary school. And they sit for examinations that are not really for selection purposes. And plans are underway to phase out the examinations so that every child will be proceeding without necessarily sitting for examinations. And then we move on from primary to secondary education. This is a 2-year transition program from, secondary education. With secondary education, we've got 2 setups. That is junior secondary school that enrolls learners from the age of 12, 13 up to 16 years. And at the end of the program, they sit for junior certificate examinations. And this one now, the transition is based on performance. So when learners have performed, they're screened, and those who would have done well, they move on to senior secondary school. And then in the near future, we have actually started, but it's still a new program that our learners will be going into the different multiple pathways as provided for by our education and training sector strategic plan. Now in senior secondary schools, it is a 2-year transition program. They enroll for Form 4 and Form 5, and they sit for Botswana General Certificate of Secondary Education, BGCSE, and they transit now into different tertiary institutions in accordance or according to their performance. Let's move on. Now we come back to the main topic, that is the mechanisms to report violence in schools. Like I said earlier on, this is a pain to schools and to the entire nation. So that is why we have this important policy, the pastoral policy, that has been established to address issues of indiscipline in schools. Therefore, the policy deliberately talks to inclusion of learners in the school governance. And the school governance is being advocated for by the inclusion of learners, by including learners through either the prefect system or the SRC system, Student Representative Council, which is more like, takes the model of a political cabinet. So this is where we find the president, the vice president, and the ministers. So in school, we'll be saying there is a minister for academics, there is a minister for student affairs, minister for sports. And that is the first place where when learners are being violated, they report to their student leadership, to the prefects or to the school cabinet. And they start with the class monitors or monitors in their classrooms. Now we go to the second level of reporting mechanism, that is the class teachers. Every class in our schools, right from primary to senior secondary, there is one teacher who will be assigned to each and every class, will be called a class teacher. This class teacher is more like a parent, and he or she provides psychosocial support, instills discipline, and support all processes of teaching and learning to ensure that there is access, there is retention, and transition in the school. Let's move on to the next reporting mechanism. We have senior teachers and senior teachers guidance and counseling. I'm deliberately pronouncing and making the senior teacher guidance and counseling to stand out from the other senior teachers, because here he plays a very pivotal role, because this is the senior teacher who is at the helm of the provision of psychosocial support in school. This is the senior teacher who is supposed to ensure that there is everything is put in place to fight violence at all costs. So the senior teachers form part of the school management, learners are free to approach these senior teachers, especially the senior teacher guidance and counseling. They feel free to report any and every case of violence. And as a result, they are being attended for, but it is also important to note that any criminal offense, they are reported directly to the police. And then following the senior teachers, we go down to heads of houses or heads of department, or shortly called HODs. The pastoral policy advocates for mini schools or houses in the main school that are led by these heads of houses or heads of department. The rationale behind this, for this initiative, is to have students be managed in smaller groups to curb indiscipline in schools and increase academic performance, thereby promoting constructive competition in between houses for the good of the entire school as an organization. Each house consists of students, parents of these learners, and the teachers. And by so doing, they come together to tackle issues of concern in school, including psychosocial issues, including violence cases.
Mrs. Gloria, you have 5 minutes to wrap up.
Let's move on to the next slide. And then the school administration, that's where we find the school head, the deputy, and the HODs. That this is the team that runs the school. Learners are free to report to them. The boarding master, we have schools where learners are staying in schools and they're called boarding schools. In the hostels, they're being taken care of by the boarding master and the matron. Learners report to them. Next slide, let's move on. And then from the boarding master, that was the school environment that ends with the boarding master. Now, when learners are out of school, there are still reporting mechanisms available. First, they can report to their parents, and then they can also report to the next mechanism structure there, social and community department. Those are the social workers. They can also move on to the next slide. They can also report their cases to the police. And what is of interest to us as a nation and what we are proud of today is that we have opened units in 2 stations in the country, one in Gaborone, the capital city, another one down in Francistown, the second biggest city in the nation. We have opened the children protection unit. It's a child-friendly unit where learners are being received, young people, being students, being children, where they can freely come and report acts of violence, and they're being assisted privately, and they're being interviewed privately, provided with counseling privately. That's why we call it a child-friendly service. They can also report to the chiefs, headmen in their villages. They can report to the religious leaders. And besides this, let's move on to the next slide. Besides this, they can also report to their political leaders, members of parliament, councillors, and cabinet members. And then besides this, we also have the NGOs or the civil society organizations like Childline Botswana, War, or Women Who Are Fighting Against Rape. They also assist with children by providing shelter, counseling, and even interviews. We also have telecounseling. Let's move on. We have an online youth telecounseling. This one, it runs from 6 o'clock in the morning up to 11 p.m. Children can phone, report acts of violence, and they receive counseling online. Let's move on to the next slide. We also facing challenges. Despite all this that we are doing, we still face challenges of unreported cases. Some parents deliberately don't report because they are receiving some groceries from parents. Some children are not reporting because they are being threatened by the perpetrators. Sometimes it's the cultural stereotypes or mindset that corporal punishment is the way to discipline a child. Inadequate public education, we still believe and feel as a nation that we still need to go a long way to educate our people, to empower them, to fight this violence. Ignorance of the law. It is upon us as a nation, as a ministry, to disseminate information regarding policies and laws in protection of our children. Escalating cases of violence in schools and outside schools are indicators that we have a challenge because they are soaring each and every day. So these are the challenges that we are facing, but we are not just seated. There are mitigation strategies that are being put in place. And this includes strengthening the guidance and counseling programs in schools by capacitating. We have actually started capacitating our teachers on trauma and crisis management. Life skills education is coming into our curriculum. They are going to be empowered and is going to be examined. School leadership training to empower school heads on how to handle issues of violence and how to manage the school support program. Parental education is also on board. The multi-sectoral approach, we are adopting it to address issues of violence in the entire nation, in our schools and in the entire nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Getsoe, for the presentation. You have done your best to present within the time allocated, so we appreciate that. Dear participants, we've had a lot of interesting and important actions being taken by the Botswana, and it will be good for us to put down our questions in the chat box or raise your hand when in time for the Q&A session. Thank you for that. Let me now invite the next presenters from Malawi. Over to you, Janet.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. From Malawi, we're going to present on one of the violence reporting mechanisms in schools. The most of the presentation will be done by the Ministry of Education and the Malawi Police Service. But just to provide a bit of the statistics, Malawi also conducted a violence against children survey, and the results of the survey were really shocking. In terms of sexual violence, 1 in every 5 girls and 1 in every 7 boys experience sexual violence before 18. And physical violence is really high. 2 in every 3 boys and 2 in every 5 girls experience physical violence before 18. Emotional violence is also there. 1 in 3 boys, 1 in 5 girls experience emotional violence before the age of 18. And 1 in 4 children experience multiple forms of violence before they reach 18 years. And we have 9.3 million children in Malawi. About 5.7 will be abused or experience violence before 18 years. And only 3.4 million would tell someone. So we have 2.3 that do not tell anyone about the experience of violence. They will tell a family member or a peer or a friend. But looking at this big figure, on less than 300,000 children ever see a professional service provider. So we have a number of violence reporting mechanisms in Malawi, but for today we'll focus on a complaints box. And I will now hand over to Shaneva from the ministry to provide statistics on the reporting of violence. Thank you. Thank you, and over to you, Shaneva.
Thank you, Janet, and everyone. Welcome to the presentation. As Janet has said, we are focusing on the statistics from the Violence Against Children study. And these statistics are for the adolescents from 13 to 17 years. If you can see from the slide, almost 60% of the girls and 54% of the boys, they were able to tell someone about an experience of sexual abuse. However, only 7.7% of girls and 5.1% boys were able to seek help for any experience of sexual abuse. Again, 26.5% girls and 44.7% boys knew of a place to seek help about an experience of sexual abuse, and only 3.1% girls and 1% boys received help for any experience of sexual abuse. So you can see the gaps that are there, whether it's help-seeking behavior, as well as even the actual help itself is a challenge. All in all, we can see that 10% of girls and 9.6% of boys were missing school due to an experience of sexual abuse. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the physical violence, again, about 60% of girls and 59.2% boys were able to tell someone about an experience of physical violence. However, 24.5% girls and 29.3% boys were able to know of a place to seek help about an experience of physical violence. Again, 14% girls and 7.9% boys sought help for any experience of physical violence, but 11.3% girls and 6.1% boys received help for any experience of physical violence. Again, just above 11% of girls and 15% of boys missed school due to an experience of physical violence. And these statistics, they create barriers to access and equity pillars of education, as encompassed in our National Education Sector Investment Plan 2020 to 2030. So next, I will allow my colleague from Malawi Police, probably before Esu comes in. We can see that school and violence versus free education outcomes, which are absenteeism, learning, and dropout. That is from 2018 Malawi Schooling and Adolescence Study. We see that school-related sexual violence will end up with poor subsequent education outcomes, as mentioned above. While domestic violence ends up in higher absenteeism for males and dropout for females from the study above. Next slide, please.
You have 5 minutes remaining, Mr. Shamba. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. Now, let me allow my my friend from Malawi Police Service to continue with the presentation, just to nail down to the strategy, one of the strategies that we are using to prevent violence in the schools. Over to you, Esu.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. As you have heard from Shaneva, after seeing or noting the findings from the study, Malawi developed several interventions, and these interventions are aimed at preventing, responding, and making referrals. But for the purpose of this presentation and the focus in the focus as we have in the Malawi Police Service and Malawi as a country, we also focusing much on prevention. Like you can see in the slides where we have the green one, where we are saying, let's focus more on prevention. So in those interventions, of course, today we are focusing on the complaint box. We're also focusing on the preventing, where we'll be able to create protective environment, where we say the response and referrals are there because an abuse has already happened. So those mechanisms are also there to make sure that we are focusing on prevention, because that's where we can really be proud of that we have really offered a protection to a child. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as we have heard and as we are talking, one of the mechanisms, reporting mechanism, is a complaint box that we introduced in schools. So in the diagram there, we see the head of Department of Community Policing officers and the officers present being handing over the complaint box to Safe School Committee, which is there to handle issues of safe schools at each and every schools that we are implementing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what happens with the complaint box, as you can see in the diagram there, the committee is retrieving complaints from the complaint box. It's done in a transparent way, where you see the box being placed in the midst, and then the complaints being taken out and reading each and every complaint for the whole committee to appreciate and then be able to come up with the right decision. So that's the diagram we were seeing. After being open, those are the complaints, and then to your left side, the committee being able to read each and every complaint so that they can make a decision. Next slide, please. So what is it when we're talking about a complaint box? So it is a box that is placed on an open ground in the schools, and the keys are kept by the police. So in choosing where to place a complaint box, the learners council is involved. The children themselves are involved to say, where do you think if you can place the box, you'll be able to drop complaints therein. So when they choose at the school, they press the box, and the learners being able to drop the box therein. And these are the issues that are affecting them. It might be a criminal, it might be social things. And periodically, the police officer responsible for the school, because we have got an initiative in this, which we're saying every police officer is responsible for a certain school. And this police officer comes at this school together with the school, safe school committee, to open the complaint box. So this safe school committee is comprising of the police officer, said, child protection worker, we have got people, parents and teacher association, learners themselves, and the mother group. These form a part of a safe school committee. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we also have a register where all complaints, once the box has been opened and all complaints taken out, we have the register which is used to record all those complaints to make sure that we are able to keep the data for the purpose of planning and being able to help the complaints that have been placed. So after reading out the complaints, the committee allocates every complaint to a responsible officer, such that every criminal issue is located to police, and these other issues maybe they're located to a teacher, they're located to parents, and whosoever we think is responsible to handle with that complaint is allocated to that one. Yeah, so as I say,
Mr. Kamwendo, you have 2 more minutes. Please wrap
all
up.
right. Yeah, I'm winding up. So as we said, we have the safe schools registers. You can see your left, and then that's inside the register to your right, the columns and what is recorded in there. That's the safe schools register that we use to record all complaints from complaint box. The next slide, please. And then connecting to a complaint box, we also have got referral pathways that are painted in schools, and they have the phone numbers of a police officer who is assigned to that school, and then your police officer for health personnel and social welfare. So the purpose is that if a child has emergency issue, apart from dropping a complaint in a box, it should be able to keep one of those phone numbers and pick to report the incident that has happened. Yeah, so those are some of the success stories. We see people being, convicted with when the complaint was dropped in the complaint and then retrieved. So those are that people being convicted. But also have some complaints like boys saying more initiatives are locating are targeting girls, so to say. So, to your left, you see boys complaining to say, please, can you also step up effort to protect us as well. So those things are coming out from the complaint box, and the responsible officers were able to allocate those officers to the responsible people to make sure that we are dealing with that complaint. Shaneva, you may wish to wind up.
In conclusion, let's go to the last slide, please. So you see that the Ministry of Education is appreciating the support that we get from UNICEF. The safer schools or the child protection in schools is one of the priorities in the National Education sector investment plan, as it is addressing to the issues of, access and equity, because under the strategic area on inclusive education, gender, and other cross-cutting issues, we have an objective of improving access and equity to quality education, and especially priority area number 6, enhancing the implementation of gender, child protection, and safety at all levels in the school sector, education sector. This initiative, the complaint box and child protection initiative, is just right placed in the education sector, responding to the key strategic documents, and we see the success stories as some of them narrated by Esu before. Thank you so much for listening, and over.
Thank you very much, Aniva, and your colleague from the police for presenting your experience in Malawi in terms of addressing violence in schools. We've heard about the complaint box, we've heard about the referral pathway, and also earlier on we heard from the mechanisms in Botswana, especially on the guidance and counseling teachers. Dear participants, now is the time for the question and answers and even comments. So feel free to raise your hand and I'll give you an opportunity to speak. So far, we have one question that has been typed in the chat box that is directed to Botswana, Gloria, Mrs. Gloria. When violence are reported, what is the next step? How are these addressed? How are the violent cases addressed? For example, if a teacher is the perpetrator of the violence, how is this addressed? And this participant will also like to learn more about what is done to protect the child that has reported. Over to you, Gloria.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for the question as well. When a child reports a case, especially like when it's the perpetrator is a teacher, what happens is that the child will be reporting maybe, let's say, to one of the teachers or maybe the class teacher. The class teacher will escalate the case to the senior teacher guidance and counseling. So the senior teacher guidance and counseling will call the child to hear and to understand the case. And in the process, she's also offering counseling because most of them are professional counselors. So after that, if it's a case that is grievous or that is criminal, then through the school administration, the senior teacher will report the case to the social worker, and eventually it goes up to the police. So if a teacher is involved, they are never going to be brought together in the same room to be interviewed together. No, the teacher will be called separately at a separate sitting to present the matter before him or her that there is this child who is having a case against you. And the teacher will also be heard as well. And then the case is going to be running separately from each other like that, up until maybe it's concluded with the police, proper investigations have taken place. And then the case, if need be, it will go up to the courts. And now this child who has reported is going to be protected right from the school because circumstances are going to be measured. If it is dangerous for the child to remain in school, either the child or the teacher will be transferred out, all in protection of the child. It will depend on the matter. Sometimes the child will be moved out. Sometimes it's going to be the perpetrator being the teacher who is going to be moved out, especially in the case of corporal punishment. But in the case of sexual abuse, the teacher will undergo disciplinary cases and go through litigations in a court of law, and quite often they are dismissed. So that's how the child is going to be protected. So when the case is also, even in the time of litigation in courts, we don't have special courts for children or for students or for young people. But instead, the ordinary courts that we have, they get a different setup. The arrangements that are made so that the child does not face the perpetrator face to face, and is being supported by the social worker who is mandated through the Children's Act to be the custodian. It's not open. And it's not even an open court to the public as it is with all other cases. Thank you.
Very much, Gloria, for highlighting the importance of the best interest of the child, even when they have reported a case and it's now going through the courts. Thank you so much. Shaniva, do you want to come in and complement to that question?
Thank you for the opportunity again. I would like to know from Botswana, especially on provision of psychosocial support in education system. Who provides the services? Are the teachers trained in psychosocial support before entering the school? Is it a pre-service training or is it in-service training? Or do you employ special psychologists to render these services in schools? Thank you, and over.
Gloria, are you ready to take that, or should we take more questions and come back to you?
Yeah, sorry for that. The psychosocial support is being provided for by the guidance and counseling teacher. The guidance and counseling teacher has undergone training. Yes, here and there, of course, there are areas where you'll find that we don't have a professional or a trained guidance and counseling teacher, but the school administration will take care of the case as cases are reported, depending on the nature of the case. So it is up to the school administration to see, and then they can get support from outside, from the social workers and from professional teacher counselors from the neighboring schools. It is allowed because the encouragement is for them to work as a team. We call it a psychosocial support team that can even include the headsmen, it includes the social workers, it can even include the police. So this teamwork is being encouraged, so such that at the end of the day, a child is assisted. So over to the director to add.
Maybe just, good afternoon, colleagues. Maybe just to add and highlight what the deputy director has just said. Our guidance and counseling teachers, especially in junior secondary schools and senior secondary schools, are trained at bachelor's degree level in guidance and counseling and at master's level in counseling and human services. So where the school does not have a professional counselor, the social workers chip in because they work hand in hand with our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director and Deputy Director of Botswana, for responding excellently to that question. Marianne, I see you've typed a question. Are you able to come in and ask directly to Malawi? Marianne?
Yes.
Please
Yes,
do.
can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes.
Wonderful. I thank the team from Malawi for being here, and I have a question for them. If they could elaborate a bit more on the perception amongst students towards this complaint box. I'm wondering, we don't have any students here to lend their voice about this topic, but I'm wondering how they were made comfortable in using this box, what kind of views they have towards it, how it was introduced in their school setting. Do they feel like they may face repercussions if they use it? I just want to know a bit more about how they feel about using this the complaint box. So if you could just kind of speak from a student perspective almost about what kind of thoughts they have towards it and how it was introduced to them and how they were acquainted and made comfortable using it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. I will start and Esther will come in. Basically, the schools have got learners' councils. We established learners' councils and we empowered them with the knowledge of children's rights, their rights and responsibilities. And before the initiative at each and every school, the Malawi police and key stakeholders, such as the Malawi Law Commission, they sensitize the school. They go for awareness, and all the children are taught and how to utilize the box, and they are about cultivating their interest. They love to use the box because they have known the benefits of the box, to the extent that they are able to assign each other to take care of the box. to take it out in the morning and to bring it inside the office after the school time. So I think there is great awareness which is taking place before each school adopts the complaint box mechanism. Esu, you can add. Thank you, and over.
Yeah, thanks, Geneva. You have rightly said it. Focus is made during an awareness in those schools, as you said, before and after and during. So the continued sensitization to learners. It's like it's not like we drop the box today and then off we go. It's a continuous sensitization, looking at the rising issues and whatever we feel like we should continue sensitizing learners. So just answer the last part of where you're talking about the children may face repercussions. There are measures put in place. First of all, we have the Safe Schools Committee, which is well oriented in issues of confidentiality and how to deal with the complaints that have been dropped in a box. So this committee deal with the complaints in a confidential way. But also children, like I said, ancestors to say, when you want to report a violence, you are free to mention your name, to mention where you come from, or you may report something anonymously that someone is being abused. But just write a keyword where investigation may state. For example, you may mention someone who is being abused, but without necessarily mentioning who is reporting. But then the duty of those investigating that case, the responsible committee says, okay, he's talking about child A being abused. That's a starting point. So we make sure that the children who are reporting are safe and they're away from any repercussions that may arise. Thank you, and all.
Chair, there is a question there directing to Malawi again. Do you cover all the schools in Malawi with the suggestion boxes under Safe School program? If not, what criteria do you use in selecting? I think the answer is yes. For all, currently we are in 10 education districts where the Safe Schools program is being implemented. So in all schools, we are covering them with the complaint boxes, and it's a package where the Malawi police, they are going there, the teachers are being trained in positive discipline, and the Malawi Law Commission is coming to sensitize them about the law sections. So it's a complete package that goes to the schools. So the answer is yes, we are targeting all schools, especially in the districts that we are implementing the Safe Schools program. Thank you.
Very much, Team Malawi, there for responding on how children perceive this the boxes. We've seen in some countries in this region where they have placed these boxes in schools, and what happens is that somebody comes in at night or at the time that there aren't anybody there to break it and remove all the letters or the complaints that have been submitted. So I'm happy to hear that in Malawi things are working and you have this across all the schools. I've just noticed, and thanks to Zamzam, that Marianne, there are several people logged in with your name. I don't know if that is from your office or these people are logging in elsewhere using your link. There are about 6, Marianne.
Yes, this is Zamzam just coming in. So I'm just suggesting to colleagues to just simply change your names. For those that have logged in with Marianne's name, you can simply just change your name. If you have any questions, just message me privately and I can help you.
Thanks, Zamzam. There is a question from Teresa. Teresa, you're asking, would you like to come in? Please come in and ask directly if you can.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to find out, and I'm sorry if this was already presented, I joined a bit late. I wanted to find out who is present during the opening of the complaints boxes and how often the boxes are opened. And then also if there's a feedback mechanism in place to respond to those complaints that have been received. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Teresa. This is again to Malawi.
Thank you so much for the question again. As ESU presented, the committee is multi-sectoral in nature. We have the Malawi Police, the community responsible for child protection, the community worker. We have the school representative, school management committee. We have the student council representative. So even the community leaders are represented. So the committee itself is well represented. So in terms of frequency of opening, the Malawi Police Service developed and the standard operating procedures which were adopted even in the ministry. So it is said that every fortnight, the Malawi police officer is supposed to be present at the school and be able to facilitate the opening of the complaint box. And after opening, responsible committee members get the complaints according to how they are coming in. If it is criminal in nature, the Malawi police, they are able to take action and be able to investigate further and do their work accordingly. So in terms of feedback, as presented in the slide, you'll see that the next coming after 2 weeks, when the committee is meeting again, they are able to bring feedback according to the assignments which they were given, the responsibilities which they took. They are able to give back the feedback. If there is an issue, to reach out to the survivors of violence or the reporters, they are able to channel those feedback accordingly through the community structures, through the school structure, even through the Parents and Teachers Association. But ESU, you can come again and shed more light on this one. Thank you.
Yes, Shaneva, you are right. They said, apart from, the SOPs are saying we should be opening complaint boxes in every fortnight. But you can also realize that some issues that they need agents. For example, a child has been defiled and has reported through the complaint box, can't wait for 2 weeks. So in the SOP, there's a phrase which is saying we can open the box at any time when there is emergency. For example, in certain schools, because learners were sensitized, so a learner drops a complaint in the box and then tips a member of mother group to say, I will place a complaint which needs emergency, maybe I was defiled. So this mother group takes up the issue frequent to make sure that the box, even if it was opened yesterday and then today there's a tip that a certain lane has blocked a complaint that needs emergency, we open the box. But in a normal circumstances, that's where we're talking about a fortnight. But when there's emergency, the box is opening, and the feedbacks are provided as Shaneva has said.
Thank you very much. Janet, would you like to compliment? I see you've typed something in the chat box.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to state there was a question whether complaints boxes are in all schools. That's what government is working towards. And recently, with the Global Partnership on Education funding, government has committed to procure and place complaints boxes in all primary schools in Malawi. And what will be required is to develop the systems around it. So the police should go in. Let me mention that when we're providing safe schools interventions, we have the learner empowerment, and then we have the services around, and then the referral, the reporting mechanisms that we are discussing today. So I just wanted to add to that to say government is moving towards placing complaints boxes in all schools in Malawi. And that's the direction that government is taking. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Janet, and everybody else from Malawi for responding well to that question. It is now 4:04 in Nairobi, and I'm just wondering if there's anybody else who would like to come in, because the next session is to share experiences of what others are doing in other countries in terms of addressing violence in schools and how effectively that works. I'm just going to pause for a little bit in case you have a question to Botswana and Malawi before we go to the discussion part. And if not, Great. Yeah. So let us now open up. One thing before I go through the next session is that it's great to see all these various referral pathways that are there in schools, and and innovations, or creativity in putting these boxes for people, for students to report. And I was just wondering, and this will go to both Botswana and Malawi. I would like to know how well, in terms of the case management, how are you able to know and report to the professional social worker that is there in the country with the mandate, under the law, to address the cases, especially the statutory cases that are being reported when it comes to the child protection concerns, and we also note that there is a dire of social service workforce in this region in East and Southern Africa. So how does that happen? In some countries within the region, we have seen that they have a child protection management information system that kind of, all cases are reported there, and they're able to have a report at the end of the month. We're also starting to see the child helplines or child lines in the southern region, but also in the eastern region, where they also keep the number of contacts received and the type of cases reported. So somehow, countries like, for example, Kenya have linked the child protection management information system with the helpline, so they're able to report and have solid data that's coming out in terms of the cases that are being managed. So I'd like to hear more from you. But before I give you the floor, I see Janet, you have your hand up if you want to add or contribute to this question. Over to you, Janet.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to say something about what you have asked. So when Shaneva and Esa were presenting in the Safe Schools Committee, there's also a child protection worker. The reason why there's a child protection worker is when the police take up the register, that's a Malawi police register. But when there are cases that need to be followed up, the child protection worker will record that in the case management system. And that's how it goes into the child protection information management system. The police will record it, and the police also have a data management system. They were inputting their cases in Rapid Pro. So the cases that the police will follow up through the criminal justice system from the child protection perspective will go into the Rapid Pro. So the cases from the school find a way into the child protection information management system through the child protection worker, and the Rapid Pro for cases through the police once they deal with the criminal aspects of the case. So there's that link, but it also still needs to be strengthened, especially in districts where the child protection worker is very far away from a school. That's where it creates a challenge. But where a child protection worker is close and able to attend the opening of the box, then that's how it links into the child protection information management system. Thank you, and over.
Thanks, Janet. Any feedback from Botswana as well? Botswana, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Yeah. Great.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we keep track of cases like Malawi is doing almost the same. Cases that are happening in schools, we actually have a way of collecting data that we report to the ministry at the end of every term. So we report through the Department of DPRES, where they collect statistics about schools. So those cases, some of them we will be indicating the status of each case. Some of them would have been handled at school level and be resolved. Some of them would have been referred to the social worker, and some of them would have been referred to the social worker and even reported to the police, either waiting litigation or would be undergoing litigation. And some of the cases as well, they don't even come through the schools. They're reported directly to the police. So the police officers or the police stations, they have their own statistics. We also have statistics that is sitting with the civil societies or the NGOs. But where cases whereby you find that when a child experiences some form of violence, they run to the civil society or the NGO that they know, which they might have met through workshops or meetings in schools. So our data is actually sitting at different forums. So what is important for us is maybe to come together to create a synergy of some sort and have some consolidated data.
Great, thank you. Thank you all very much. I think we are also seeing the importance of keeping and having administrative data, that is collected to show your operations, the sort of, cases that you're reporting, and the sort of services that you're providing to children. That is well noted. I'm looking again at the chat box. Are there any more questions there? No, I'll just give maybe 5 minutes to any of the participants from another country who would like to share their experience. I think we have several countries from East and Southern Africa on this call. Would anybody else want to share their experience? I see Tanzania, Zambia, and many others. Feel free to come in. There's a hand. Okay, who is this? Gloria, I see your hand is up. Please come in.
Yes, I just wanted to add in something related to what Malawi is doing, that in our schools, instead of the complaints box, we used to have that, and I liked the way Malawi is doing it. I think it's a good practice. We will tap and benchmark on some of the things like involving the police when they're opening it. In our case, we used to put these complaints boxes around the schools, and like you said earlier on, they will be attacked at night and get destroyed, and we lose the information. So what currently is happening in schools, we have the triple S, we call it Student Satisfaction Survey. At the end of every term, there are questionnaires that are passed around by heads of department or heads of houses. They interview their students in their departments and get feedback on how they find their life in school and outside of school. So when those satisfaction surveys are when they go through them, after collection, when they get the feedback, that's when they will pick some cases and then they start making follow-ups accordingly. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gloria, for elaborating further there. Thank you. So we have several countries on this call. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I see Kenya, Lesotho, Botswana, of course, Malawi. Anybody from the region who would like to share their experiences?
Hi, Mona.
Yes, Jacqueline, please come in, Jax.
Sorry, I was having some challenges with my Zoom for a second there. But hi, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for the great presentations. Just quickly for us in Tanzania, we also do work very closely with guidance and counseling teachers. We've done a lot of work in trying to train guidance and counseling teachers across the country. And we have new guidelines that we've supported the government on, which include child protection component. But I heard the discussion on the boxes, and we also use that to complement the guidance and counseling teachers, and we call them happy and sad boxes in Tanzania. And happy and sad because we don't want to only focus on the bad, the issues and concerns and the violence and abuse, but we want the children to also share what is working well in the schools, which then also helps to encourage the teachers and the management and so forth, and also to share suggestions on what could be improved and so forth. But in our experience, the boxes have worked really well in exposing cases of violence and abuse that are happening both within the school, but also in the homes and the community at large. And you have the guidance and counseling teachers, as well as children representatives and the head teacher that sit together to open the box And whether it's every 2 weeks, usually generally it's every 2 weeks, and there's a padlock on these boxes, and there are 2 keys for the box. That way, nobody alone can ever open the boxes and tamper with the notes that are in the boxes. So they agree as a committee how often they want to open the box, and then they're all present. And then when they open the box, they record all of the notes that are in the box in their book. And then if there is a case of violence and abuse that is above their capacity, then they would reach out to the social welfare officer to support and follow through the case and give the child involved the necessary support. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie, for sharing the Tanzania experience, not just collecting the negative, the report, the abuses, but also aspects that children are happy about in their schools and their protection. I see there is a hand from Shaniva, and this, yeah, Shaniva, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for an opportunity. I just wanted to say something about the complaint box in Malawi. When we were, introducing the complaint boxes in schools, we were faced with the challenges among teachers, because most of the teachers would see the complaint box as a mechanism of, we call here witch hunting, as deliberately finding fault among them. So they would perceive it with hatred, and they couldn't understand why the Malawi Police Service, they're bringing in the complaint box and sensitizing the community and the learners so that they should put complaints in them. They thought they were being targeted. However, after several sensitizations, they came to embrace the mechanism, and they are now supporting it fully hearted because they see now the benefits of the mechanism, especially when they are linked it with the education outcomes. The dropouts have now started reducing, the crime rate has now, is reducing. And so there are so many benefits connected to that. I just wanted to, highlight some of the challenges that we faced when we were introducing the complaint boxes in the schools. Thank you, Chair, and over.
Thank you very much for that experience in Malawi, and you're starting to see some good results. What comes to my mind before I hand the floor back to Zamzam, I'm just wondering, in terms of how are you assessing or even evaluating these boxes to see how effective they are, in actually providing services and support to children as a channel of an entry point to reporting a case. Maybe this is something we can also consider and implement eventually, so that we can confidently say these systems work, these boxes work. Now it's 18 past the hour. We have 2 more activities before we close. I would like to hand the floor to Zamzam, who will administer a survey on this webinar, and then we'll hear from Marianne for the closure. So over to you, Zamzam.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you, colleagues, for such an engaging conversation. You may have received in the chat box the link to the survey. I've also shared onto the screen the survey. We're just asking you to just take 5 minutes out of your time before we do our closing remarks to just fill out the survey so that we can assess how we're doing with these type of learning events. And it really supports us to really do an understanding of who's coming to learning events, what we can do better. So if we can just take 5 minutes to just fill out the survey as we're here. It's only a 4-minute to 5-minute survey. And then we can move on to our closing remarks, which will be done by our team leader from the KIX Hub, Marianne.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Gloria, we can hear you.
I'm not able to type my answers. My cursor cannot go through. I don't know whether there's a case actually that I'm seeing there. I can't type, my words are not, I mean, I don't know what to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can use the chat box, Zamzam. I don't know if you want to come in.
Yes, yeah, I was just going to suggest that perhaps you can use the chat box or reach out to me if there is a particular issue, Gloria.
Yeah, let me try the chat box. But where are the questions? Am I going to be seeing the questions in there?
Maybe project again the questions. Zamzam.
Okay, yeah, the questions I can see them.
But everybody else is able
Yeah,
to
it's
type
fine.
in, or is it just Gloria having problems?
I'm fine now.
Okay, I do see a few responses, but colleagues, if you can continue to just put in a response, we have 2 minutes left for this. If you can just add in your responses, this is really helpful for us to make an assessment of how these surveys are going. Thank you.
Position about
Gloria, not Gloria, sorry, Zamzam. I was thinking that now it's 25 past. What we can also do at the end is to share the recording and the slides, but also the survey for those who are not able to provide their responses. Then they can do it later on. Over to you, Zamzam, to welcome Marianne.
I'm in agreement with you, Mona. Marianne, the floor is yours, and I'll let you do your introductions.
Thank you, Zamzam. Hello, everyone. My name is Marianne Reyes-Shecha, and I am the team leader and management consultant of the KIX Africa 19 Hub. I have a great honor and privilege of working with a great team of people at UNESCO ICPA, UNICEF ISARO, and the AU. I just want to thank you so much for coming in today, especially to everyone, the child protection officers who were here, and all the participants. I hope that you gained some new insights from being here today and maybe made a new contact. Maybe you shared your email or your phone number with one of the speakers in the chat box. So we hope that you can continue the conversation later by maybe making a new contact today. And I'd like to thank the organizers from UNICEF today who put together this marvelous and interesting and conversation that's just beginning, that certainly isn't ending with the end of this webinar. I also want to thank the speakers. We heard from Malawi and Botswana. We heard from Gloria, from Janet, from Asao, and from Shanavir today. And I thank you so much for coming in to share, especially to Botswana, because Botswana is not officially a GPE KIX country, but has come in and shared enthusiastically several times at events. And for that, we're grateful. So what is KIX? KIX, K-I-X, it stands for Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. And it's the organization, the project that you're here today experiencing. So the purpose of this platform, this KIX platform, is to share this knowledge and innovation between countries. It's really the sharing of educational ideas by African countries, for African countries, and amongst African countries, and solutions such as Malawi's compelling example of the complaint boxes that students are using to report abuse. So today, what have we done? We've heard from Malawi and Botswana, and even briefly from Tanzania, about how they're addressing violence in schools and gender-based violence in schools. So we know that it's a tragic reality that millions of girls and boys are at risk of being harmed in the places that should be like their second homes, their schools. These are places where they should be safe to learn, to think, to grow, to be children, to be innocent, to be 12, to be 6 years old. But we know that it's not so. We know that millions of children are at risk of violence and abuse. The abuse they face may be physical, it may be sexual, it may be emotional, mental. No matter what it is, it's long lasting. And unfortunately, we heard that many children, they tell no one about their trauma and they have no access to counselors. And we know that according to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs that he wrote about in 1943, that if people's most basic needs for food, water, and safety are not met, then they can't possibly focus on their higher needs, their higher order needs, such as the need to think, the need to learn, and the need to self-actualize through education. So if their basic need of safety is not met in their school setting, how can they possibly focus on what a teacher is trying to get them to think about? So we know now that there are some emerging solutions to this crisis. We heard about innovations like the complaint box. It's simple, but it's revolutionary and innovative. And it's local, created and managed by the local community. In Botswana, we heard about the complex levels of reporting, interviewing, surveying, monitoring, and counseling that work together to contribute towards a system that protects learners in the environment where they deserve to be safe. They have the right to be safe in their schools. And in Tanzania, we heard about the happy and sad faces on surveys that give learners the chance to express their experiences to authorities. So these solutions today, which are just a few of the many that we know are happening at different levels in GPE KIX countries, these solutions signal a shifting in paradigms of thinking that give more credence to the voice of the child rather than just the authority of the adult. So let the good work continue and let the sharing of solutions like these today and the sharing of dialogues like this one today continue, and let the sharing of results and evidence on these solutions continue. So we thank you again for coming in and for sharing. I wish everyone a good evening and a thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.